Hi, this is Charlene Burke with Grow Because You Know. That's www.growbecauseyouknow.com. Welcome to Morning Mindset Cafe. Today we're talking about Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. More specifically, we are on chapter 15, where he talks about the 6 basic fears. More specifically, you and I are going to be focusing our attention on the fear of poverty. And my question to you now, and to be answered after the discussion, is quite simply, is the fear of poverty actually making you poor? Oh, it's quite a question, isn't it? I know many people think that fear of poverty is the impetus, the fuel to do things, so never to be poor again. That's part of how some people get their money and make their money. Yes, that's part of the fuel. It's not the fear we're talking about. All right, the fear of poverty. So here's the thing. There are two roads, one leading to poverty and one leading to riches, and they're in opposite directions. I mean, we've got one going this way, one going this way. One goes to poverty, one goes to riches. If you want riches, you must refuse to accept any circumstance that leads towards poverty. Okay, now, we're also talking about riches in the broadest sense. It's not just financial. It's not just financial. We're also talking about spiritual, mental, and material things. And that's because if you've ever met somebody who is spiritually bankrupt, it is just as bad as being emotionally, physically, and financially bankrupt. Okay, so we are talking about riches in the broadest sense. Poverty, that covers all of these. So the starting point of the path that leads to riches is desire. We learned about that in chapter 1 of this book. And you and I got full instructions for the proper use of desire. Now, in this chapter that we're going over now, which is entire chapters about fear, more specifically about poverty right now, you and I are given complete instructions for preparing our minds to make practical use of desire. All right, here's a challenge. Here's a challenge that will definitely determine just how much of this philosophy we have absorbed. And according to Napoleon Hill, here's the point at which you and I, where we can turn prophet, as in foresee the future, as in tell what's coming. And we can foretell accurately what the future holds in store for us. And in all honesty, if after reading this chapter, after our discussion this week about fears, and especially about our fear of poverty, which we're about to go into, if you are willing to accept poverty, you may as well make up your mind to receive poverty. Honest to goodness, this is one decision you simply cannot avoid. All right, so we have a question. Spiritual riches are not on earth. That's correct. I'm talking about our inside spirit, spiritual condition. We've talked about faith. We've talked about tapping into infinite intelligence. We've talked about prayer throughout our time with this book. And so that's what we're talking about. You can be spiritually rich. That is up to you to maintain it. It is up to you to get it. It is up to you to decide what that looks like, right? So yes, we are talking about spiritual riches as well as material, as well as financial, as well as mental. So the opposite is true, is it not? We can be impoverished in those areas. We can experience poverty. Those who are lost spiritually pray and have no feeling that anything's listening. have no belief in anything outside of the value of who they are as a human being, and that's all they are, is their physical attributes, and put those to use and all will be well. They don't have that richness that comes from knowing there's something greater than ourselves available to us. So yes, it includes all of those. Welcome, Christian. Welcome, Catherine. It's good to see you here. All right, so that's your challenge. If, when we're done, you're still willing to accept poverty, I'm just going to put it out to you right now that you're going to get poverty, and you may as well walk away, because you made the decision that you're not going to make any changes. You've made the decision you're not going to think any differently. You've made the decision that somebody else is going to control your future. That's up to you. I've not made that decision. I've made a decision about myself. And those of us in here to this point have all expressed to me that you too have made a decision. You're not going to be poor. You are not meant to be poor, and you are not wanting to live in poverty in any way. So if you demand riches, let's determine what form those riches are in and how much will be required to satisfy you. Think about that. How much will be required to satisfy you? You know the road that leads to riches. You've been given a roadmap. It's been laid out for us, hasn't it? That roadmap has been laid out for us in this book. And if we follow it, that roadmap will keep us on the road to riches. If you neglect to make the start or stop before you arrive, no one will be to blame but you. That's right. It's all up to me. No one's to blame but me if I don't start or if I stop partway on the road before I arrive to my destination that I have planned out and that I have the path and the map in front of me to follow. It's my responsibility. And honestly, no excuse or alibi is going to save us from that, accepting the responsibility. So no alibi will save you from accepting the responsibility if you now fail or refuse to demand riches of life. Because the acceptance calls for but one thing. One thing you can control, and that is the state of mind. State of mind is something that one assumes. It cannot be purchased. It must be created. Fear of poverty is a state of mind, nothing else. So I want to think about that for a second. It's just a state of mind. How often have we heard or said, it's God's will that I be poor? There will always be poor people in the world. Well, actually, I believe that because they believe they're going to stay poor. Right? Or well, how about I can show you, oh my God, I can introduce you to people in the county I live. Well, we've always lived like this. Oh, poor us. Yeah, well, we know how to work the system and we know how to get what we need. Nobody ever wanted more. And that's really what it boils down to. Because if you listen to them, and that's why I don't want to hang around them, they settled. And they didn't just settle because life got a little hard. No, I'm talking multi-generational settling. I mean, I'm not talking about, well, Dad had it really rough, and now I'm having it rough. Those are people that look at things as temporary, right? I can introduce you to people that are third-generation welfare recipients. And perfectly okay doing that. They have no desire to change. They're quite comfortable because they know how to live within those confines. They have no desire to have anything more or to have anything different. To them, this is just the way it is and always will be. I can introduce you to single mothers who received quite a few years ago there came through a local bank the ability for these single mothers for $500 to buy a house. And it sounded really good to them. They'd always wanted a house. They had no intentions of doing anything differently, but they wanted a house. None of them are in those houses today because they weren't willing to even, when I asked the question, all right, so you have the house, what are the payments? Oh, that's okay, my checks will cover it. I mean, that's the thinking. My checks will cover it. My checks come from the state. What about maintenance on the house? They didn't want to talk about that. What about when the house needs a roof? All the things that are taken care of by the state, if you will, the landlord in the housing unit they're currently in, suddenly they're going to have to be responsible for. They're going to have to pay the water bill and the electric bill and everything else. They didn't want to hear that because all they wanted was a house. Were they ready for it? Absolutely not. The system is operated by employees within the state that we live in. These are state agencies, government agencies that determine what you get for whatever it is that you apply for. I'm just talking about the mindset of somebody who is now the second or third generation having babies. I can introduce you to them right now. And I knew them back in the 80s, and nothing's changed. Their kids are doing the exact same thing. And the thing is, they just have no desire for anything different. They have a want for some material things. They don't have a desire to live differently. It's just not there because you can hear it in the way they speak. Well, this is God's will. It's God's will that we're supposed to be this way. Not, it's God's will that this is happening right now and I can turn to God to change my situation. That's not what you hear. What you hear is, it's a defeatist kind of thing. They're perfectly content. I'm not saying that they're happy, sad, or anything like that. I'm just pointing out the difference in the mindset, right? That it's in the thinking. They didn't have the desire for anything different. So what happens when you have a fear of poverty? And that actually took over many in our country in the US since the recession. So what happens is the fear actually paralyzes the faculty of reason. Your whole view on trying to reason things out and think logically is skewed because it also destroys imagination. You can't think beyond just what's right in front of you. You know, kills off self-reliance because you're setting up. I just explained to you how some of these women were that well, I'll be okay because the check will always be there. Not, I'll be okay because I know I can get what I need. I can do it. Doesn't matter what's happening around me. Doesn't matter who's doing anything. I don't have to rely on a check. Here's the difference we just talked about is that mindset of somebody who is reliant on somebody else. I happen to bring up state welfare system. Same thing applies to people who are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, still reliant on their parents to support them. To think about that for a second. Think that through. They're reliant on somebody else to make their decisions and to take care of them when they're perfectly capable of doing it. They just don't desire to do it. Here's the difference. When something really bad happens, they don't have the imagination or the fortitude to make decisions to get themselves out of bad situations. When my husband and our home was destroyed by a contractor who did their job incorrectly, we were homeless for 7 months. Now, if we'd had the attitude, well, that's just God's will. Oh, geez. Nothing we can do about it. I wouldn't be sitting here today. I wouldn't, when we had the attitude of, all right, we're going to get through this and we're going to do what needs to be done and we're going to take care of things and we're going to be better for it. And we rebuilt the house. I was in school full-time. I was working full-time. I was working part-time. He was in charge of rebuilding the house. And he did that. And we got ourselves out of there and we sold it. I wouldn't be sitting here today as a business owner had that we not done that. Somebody else, and I've seen it, somebody else gets hit with something that big and they crumble. Because because their safety net isn't there, right? And because their safety net is fallible, put it that way. Their safety net is fallible. So if I'm relying on you, think about this for a second. I'm relying on you to send me a check every month. And something happens to you. Something happens to you, and I don't get that check. Now what? I mean, I'll panic. But I'm not going to have any idea of how to do anything differently because I never had the desire to be self-reliant. It was destroyed by, well, it's so much easier to rely on you taking care of me. Just think about that. All right, so this fear of being poor, fear of poverty, wipes out enthusiasm and makes self-control impossible, and it encourages procrastination. Let's put this fear of poverty in the form of staying in a job that's soul-sucking. Soul-sucking. And you're staying there on purpose because you're afraid if you leave that job, you're going to be thrown into poverty. And yet, look what it's doing to you. Why do we call it a soul-sucking job? Because you don't have any imagination. You don't have any desire to be anything different because that job gives you the paycheck in order forevermore, right? This is the way it is. So you don't have the imagination. You think you're self-reliant because you get up every day. I know this because I thought this. You get up every day and you go to work, don't you? You have no desire to be anything else. Or you think things should be different, but you don't have a yearning to do anything differently. You just figure, well, this is the way it's always been. This is all that's available to me. And everything gets shut off. It doesn't matter what I think, feel, or believe. I have to be at this job forevermore because if I don't, I'm going to be put into poverty and I can't be poor. So it sucks that initiative out. It destroys accurate thinking. You ain't pleasant, right? It takes the charm from one's personality. This is what's in the book. Yeah, you ain't a pleasant person to be around. You don't have any willpower. You have no ambition, right? And you're basically inviting failure in every conceivable form. Remember, think about this. What do you envision when you think about soul-sucking job? I'm doing something because I'm afraid I'm going to be poor if I don't. Kills love and the finer emotions of the heart. Discourages friendship. Who wants to be around somebody who's always miserable? Right? Leads to sleeplessness, misery, unhappiness. Can we go into health? Destroys your health. No. All right, so we have some comments. Need to treat my procrastination. I'm with you on that, buddy. Treatment for procrastination is action. Figure out what it is you want. What are you desiring? And is that what you really want? And can you define it? Remember, we talked about that. Definite chief aim, right? One income model in a family gets me thinking now. Do you know, I can also, and so I was just talking about all these icky people I can introduce you to. They sound icky, don't they? They sound like these huge anchors and weighing everything down. At least it felt that way to me when I was describing it to you. I can introduce you to people that only have one income. And they're okay. They're okay. And they do it on purpose. They homeschool. I know people who are full-time RVers so that they can be with their family. And you're going to love this. And they live in an RV on purpose. And trust me, they ain't poor. I can introduce you to a couple that's cranking out, $250,000 a year. They live in a remodeled Bluebird bus. They travel the U.S. They love their life. They decided that's what they wanted to do. They started on the path of action to making it happen. Yeah, so I can show you the other side. But you see, they're not afraid of being poor. All right, so the one income model is quite possible. Actually, yeah. So having said that, there's a family of 5 that lives in an awesome RV. They actually ended up settling on a plot of land on top of a mountain not too long ago, and then decided the itchy foot got to them, so they hit the road again. They have one income. He's the one that makes his income virtually and has for quite a few years. And they live how they want to live. She homeschools the kids. They're fully socialized. You'd never know. They live in an RV. They're in great shape. They're living the life they want, and they're not hurting anybody, and they are not breaking any of the laws of the universe. Wow. How about using that to kick the fear of poverty to the curb? All right, so this happened to Catherine in 2008. She was writing content. Oh, geez. All right, so my screen is jumping, and that's always fun. She was writing content for others, and they were paying her. And the online industry collapsed, and her checks stopped coming. Struggled for a long time, both with herself and her husband's concerns, but have settled in the last few weeks that I am drawing money to me daily, and I'm living my dream, and I will walk in exceeding abundant above all I can think or imagine, and that's a lot. It is. It is. This has nothing to do with being knocked for a loop. You were knocked for a loop. I was knocked for a loop. And I've been knocked off my game. Those are temporary, though, right? Those are temporary. And that's how we look at it. They're temporary. I've shared with you, I spent well over a year, possibly 2 years, in survival mode. I had to get myself out of it. I knew I had to. I wanted to get myself out of it. I looked for ways to get myself out of it. I got out of it. So how do I get myself and my family into a position of being comfortable financially? Remember, look at those principles. Look at those principles. Definite chief aim. Are you very clear on what that looks like? What's comfortable to you? And sometimes, honestly, you can look at where you are right now and say, well, this isn't it. Great. If you were to compare it to something else, what is comfortable for you? You determine the amount of money you need. You determine the amount of money you want. Begin there and then determine, what does that really look like? What does that provide you? Now you put desire behind it. You see where I'm going? It's called the principles of success. Put the desire behind it. That is what you're going to get. Understand that it begins in the mind. You decide. You make the decision that it will change. You make the decision what it's going to look like. You make the decision of putting a faith behind that desire. Now go look for some people to help you get there. So why is it important to do it in that order? Because if you're going to go to people and ask for help, you don't know what to ask them for. right? And you're not asking for, honestly, it just isn't going to work unless you have different friends than I do. I want $250,000. Can you help me get that? I want to build a business that offers these services. Can you help me do that? That's why you have to start at the beginning. Try to leapfrog over some of this stuff, and that's why you get derailed and get off the path. Start at the beginning. Must have a rested mind to keep my actions successful. Okay. All right, so we started out with a discussion about the fear of poverty because without doubt, it is the most destructive of the 6 basic fears. It's at the head of the list of those 6 because it is the most difficult to master. Considerable courage is required to state the truth about the origin of this fear, and still greater courage to accept the truth after it's been stated. Think about this for a second. The fear of poverty grew out of man's inherited tendency to prey upon his fellow man economically. Man, with his superior sense of intuition, with the capacity to think and to reason, gets more satisfaction out of eating his fellow man financially. Man is so avaricious that every conceivable law has been passed to safeguard him from his fellow man. All right, can we look at that for a second? Can we look at that? Laws have been put in place to safeguard me from who? Monopolizing businesses, right? Corporations that want to monopolize a market, limit my choices. Laws have been put in place to protect me from creditors. Laws have been put in place for the banking institution to ensure that I am not going to be taken advantage of. I want you to think about this for a second. It's neither good nor bad. It's just the truth. Regulations, limitations, restrictions when it comes around the handling of money and wealth. It's to safeguard us from those who would do us harm. Okay. Because that's how we are as men, as humans. Okay. There was a time, and actually in many circles this is still true, the age in which we live today is that a man is considered less than the dust of the earth unless he can display a fat bank account. I can, oh my goodness, you can show me people. That's all they're concerned about is how much money do you make? I love it when somebody asks me, first off, they ask me if I'm successful, and I can honestly say, yes, today I can. Well, how much money do you make? Tain't none of your business. It's not. First off, success is determined by me and what I deem to be successful. Second of all, who cares how much money I have? Honestly, I've had so much it was ridiculous that was gone in a week's time. Gone. So whatever I tell you today could easily be different next week. Because I live in a country that allows me to go from 0 to 100,000, back down to 20, up to 200, back down to 10 at any given time. It's fluid. I live in a country that while we talk in terms of working class, we have poverty, working class, low class, middle class, high class. All that's for is for the IRS to determine what tax they're going to put on you. That has nothing to do with how much money I am capable of making, or you are capable of making, or earning, or investing, or creating. All it is a label for the IRS. Keep that in mind. It's from the IRS. The Internal Revenue Service needs a way to determine how much tax are we going to put onto your income. If you're an individual, how much tax are we going to put on your revenue and your profit if you're a business? And that's broken into brackets. And these brackets, for general purposes, to be able to speak reasonably intelligently, are, well, that's the middle class, that's the high class, that's the low class. And you can move into any bracket you want to. All starts with you. Through a long line of inherited experiences, man has learned for sure that some men, some women cannot be trusted where matters of money and earthly possessions are concerned. This is a rather stinging indictment, and the worst part of it is that it's true. It is true. The majority of marriages are motivated by the wealth possessed by one or both of the contracting parties. No wonder there's divorce courts are so busy. Still today, it's true today, isn't it? So eager is man to possess wealth that he will acquire it in whatever manner he can through legal methods if possible, through other methods if necessary or expedient. Self-analysis may disclose weaknesses which one does not like to acknowledge. It's tough. But if you're ready, it's time to face the facts squarely. You need to ask yourself, I need to ask myself definite questions and demand direct replies. When it's over, you're going to know so much more about yourself. And honestly, if you don't feel you can be an impartial judge in the self-examination, call on someone who knows you well and let them cross-examine you. Because you're after the truth. You are ready to move forward. You don't want to be where you are now, and you've made the decision that you are not going to live in poverty. The majority of people have asked what they fear most. Have you ever seen that? A lot of people say, I fear nothing. I know better than to say that. Few people realize they are bound, handicapped, whipped spiritually and physically through some form of fear. That's because it's so darn subtle and it's so deeply seated that we don't even recognize it as fear. It's only this courageous analysis that discloses the presence of this universal enemy of fear. And when we begin it, is when we are really on the road to major change and to getting what we desire. So, we've talked about fear of poverty. Now let's talk about a few of those symptoms. Just a few of those symptoms. Indifference. Lack of ambition. You're willing to tolerate. Be doing without. You're willing to tolerate it. Acceptance of whatever life offers. No protest. Mental and physical laziness. Lack of initiative, imagination, enthusiasm, and most of all, lack of self-control. Everything's about right now. Do it right now. Got to get it right now. It's in my hands right now. Don't have to think any further than what's in front of me right now. And it's backed by a sense of urgency, not enthusiasm for more, not enthusiasm or desire for something different, but you're going to take care of me, right? How about indecision? Staying on the fence. Letting someone else do your thinking. Why? Why is that a symptom of the fear of poverty? Because you might be wrong. And if you're wrong, and what are you stuck in trying to decide whether or not to leave the job to start the business? Maybe you've started the business and it's almost to the place of being able to support the family, but you're still not going to leave that job. You can't make that decision. Just don't know what to do. I'm on the fence. Doubt. Doubt is expressed through alibis and excuses. Well, cover up, explain away, or apologize for your failures. And it's sometimes expressed in the form of envy who are successful or by criticizing them. How about worry? Usually expressed by finding fault with others, a tendency to spend beyond one's income, neglect of personal experience. What do you think about that? I'm constantly worrying about what tomorrow is going to bring. I'm constantly worried that about people, places, and things not happening the way I want them to, or that it won't happen the way I want it to. I'm worried that I made the decision and I'm worried that it's going to fall apart. It's not going to work out the way I'd hoped, because I'm not backing it by desire and faith and definiteness and clarity. All the other principles we talked to this point. I'm not backing it with anything. I just made a decision and now I'm worrying like crazy over it. Overcaution. You know, we've talked about, in this room, we've talked about analysis paralysis, and that was me. I was overcautious. And this line really sticks out to me because I knew this. So it's knowing all the roads to disaster. Oh yeah. In my research, I made sure I knew all the possibilities and I knew all the roads that were going to lead to failure and lead to disaster, but never searched for the plan to avoid it. Think about that for a second. Can you describe all the ways it's going to fail? Great. Yay for you for researching, right? But are you a real researcher? Trust me, this was something I had to look at on myself, because I consider myself a researcher. And I had to ask this question of myself. Actually, I heard it in somebody else and realized, oh, how's that for glaring truth? I could tell you all the reasons why something was going to fail. I couldn't tell you what the roads to avoid that failure looked like. I found what I was looking for, didn't I? Found a reason not to move forward. If you're not careful, it becomes a permanent habit and you're not going to get anywhere. Procrastination, put off to tomorrow. Something that should have been done last year, not yesterday. Should have been done last year. Spending enough time in creating excuses to have the job done. This symptom is closely related to overcaution, doubt, and worry. You know, they all tie in together because you're refusing to accept responsibility when it can be avoided. You know? It's easier to avoid than to just step up. Willingness to compromise rather than put up a stiff fight. Compromising with difficulties instead of harnessing them and using them as stepping stones to advancement. Bargaining with life for a penny instead of demanding prosperity, opulence, riches, contentment, and happiness. Planning is procrastination. You're planning what to do if and when overtaken by failure instead of burning all those bridges and making retreat impossible. How about expecting poverty instead of demanding riches? Associating yourself with those who accept poverty instead of seeking the company who demand and receive riches. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Does any of that resonate with us? In some form, it resonates with me. Still does. I haven't totally eliminated these things, but I can tell you I no longer live by that fear of poverty. And I've reconciled that I can demand, and I am worthy, and I deserve, and I will get that which I'm working towards. Because I'm willing to work towards it, because I have a plan in place, because I've gotten people who can help me do it. I'm clear about where I want to go. I have the faith. I've backed it with the desire. I'm pretty persistent. All those principles, right? Good morning, Walter. Hello, Joe. Welcome, Paul. Nice to see you here. Samantha, how are you this morning? Talking about fear of poverty. And in all honesty, these symptoms, if you've got them, that's what's keeping you poor. Now, an explanation about why he wrote this book. It says, Money Talks. Some have asked him, why did you write a book about money? Why measure riches in dollars alone? And some believe, and rightly so, there are other forms of riches more desirable than money. There are riches which cannot be measured in terms of dollars. This is to Alfredo's question earlier about spiritual riches, mental riches, emotional, physical. It's not all just material and financial. So there's just as many that say riches cannot be measured in terms of dollars as say that give me all the money I need, I'll find everything else I want. The major reason why Napoleon Hill wrote this book on how to get money is the fact that the world has passed through an experience that left millions of men and women paralyzed with the fear of poverty. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit more history than that. This is straight out of the book. In 1937, the President of the United States asked Napoleon Hill basically to write this book. He had written Law of Success, which is much more in-depth, about 4 times the size of Think and Grow Rich, that goes in-depth in every principle, 16 of them. And when I say in-depth, I'm talking about an analysis of each of those principles. And they're anywhere from, 80 to 150 page chapters per principle. 16 of them. It's a hefty book. So I want you to think about, we're in a state of depression when this book was written. We're in a state of depression. The President of the United States approaches Napoleon Hill and says, I need you to write a book based off of Law of Success for this country to get us out of the depression. Essentially, people are believing that they will always be in poverty, and that's just not true. Let's write this book and get it out to them. And it was given to them, and they purchased this book, and millions and millions and millions of copies of this book. It's on the top 10 bestsellers since this book was written, right? And many have benefited from this book. The key to me is there are many that read the book. They didn't study it. There are others that read the book, and because it didn't make sense to them, they set it aside. And there's still others that didn't have a desire for anything different. So when they read the book, it didn't apply to them. Now, think about this recession, worldwide recession we've just come out of. How many now are reading this book and thinking, oh, that's great for you, but I'm tired. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm just going to sit back. How many have read the book, just read it, and mind you, and that's it? Didn't see it as a text to be studied. And how many are not sitting with us today, going through this book, studying it, talking about it, wondering how can I apply it to my life today? How many are not putting it into action? Yes, Walter, changing your life from poverty to riches is keeping your plan in motion. It's action. It's action. It's not just thinking about how much money you want, because just sitting and thinking ain't going to do it, right? Action. That's why I have Morning Mindset Cafe. It's the only way we're going to be able to make changes. Have to be done. First identifying the problem, then identifying the solution, and then putting it into action. So this fear of poverty, are you seeing where the fear of poverty is making people poor? Money makes the difference. It just does. It's money that will make a big difference in a man's self-worth. It's money that will make a difference in a woman feeling secure. You can, just is. That's why this book was written, is because at the time there were men that were devastated. They couldn't provide for their family. They couldn't see opportunities in front of them because they were so closed off with that fear. They were fear of staying in that situation and didn't know how to get out. So here was, yes, there are people in poverty that see no escape. That's why this book was written. And even upon reading the book, they don't see that there is an escape. They don't see it. But we do, don't we? And that's why we're here today. We see that. So that pretty much concludes the chapter, or that portion of chapter 15, which is fear of poverty. We'll go through some of the other fears throughout this week. That pretty much puts it in place, doesn't it? Samantha, the timing for this topic is perfect, hey? Good. Good. So did anybody identify some of those symptoms in themselves? And maybe that's what's keeping you back from success? That's what's holding you back from taking action? I mean, indecision alone. There's this, okay, let me find this. I have to show you this image that I shared on Facebook. Oh my word, it was so funny. My husband took one look at it and he said, well, that pretty much describes it, doesn't it? And others have been sharing it because it is so descriptive. Let's see if I can, geez. Of course, now when I want it, it's not right there, is it? There it is. Let me get the, maybe I can get the permalink for it. Let's see if I can get it up here. Wow. All right, can you enlarge that so you can see it? It says, be decisive. Right or wrong, make a decision. The road of life is paved with flat squirrels who couldn't make a decision. How's that for an answer to being indecisive? You want to be a flat squirrel? You want to make it to the other side of the road. Now, how in the world did you get Forever in Blue Jeans stuck in your head? Oh, Samantha, I have most of these symptoms. Yikes, ouch. Okay, well, thank goodness you identified them, right? Study the chapter and book again. Yeah, Samantha, if you click on the live stream, it should take you to the image. Oh, Money Talks took you to Forever in Blue Jeans. Well, now it's in my head. Thank you. All right. So you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I know. So, sometimes when I read about this stuff, I get mad enough, I finally do something about it. But you know why? Why is that? It's because I suddenly get clarity. And I get I'm going to get mad because, dang it, it's still inside of me. Oh, that's what's holding me back. Well, get mad. Do something. Oh, yeah. Knowing better? Yeah, if we're not careful, boy, oh boy, can I get stuck in that one. I can. Because I can tell you that I knew most of these principles and lived them with a definite purpose that came true on a daily basis. Never thought to apply it to success in business. Isn't that interesting? That's how focused I got. And that's how narrow thinking I can be, is that these are universal principles that can apply to anything that I set in front of me that to attain. And yet I didn't do it. The way I was living was all focused on something in particular. It's the only way that I took care of my health. Was the sole focus of doing these things is what works. Well, continue to do these things. And my health improved, and that's great. Didn't think to just change health to wealth. How's that for beating yourself up? So, light bulb moment. I call them halogen light bulb moments because they're really bright, because I feel so like everything's right in front of you. But hey, you know what? At least we're seeing it. We're seeing it, and we can make the decision to make the change. We can make the decision to think differently and do differently, or make the decision that everything I've done to this point that worked in order to get me to the achievement I was looking for has just changed direction and now point it towards something else. You've taught your children all their lives they need to speak good, positive, and uplifting because their words have power. And you've only started putting that to work in your business. Again, yes, putting what we know to be true now in the direction of something else, to the attainment of riches, to the attainment of wealth, to the attainment of success in the business. What holds people back is they want to be successful and they create a plan. Then when they don't see results right away, they give up on their plan. Aha. You know what that is? That's lack of desire and lack of faith. That's what gets you through the temporary setbacks. Are also not surrounding themselves with people who are successful, because we will tell you that it's just temporary. Pick yourself up. Let's go. Oh, you didn't have it by the date you set? Okay, so doesn't mean you stop. Let's take a look at what's happening now. Let's take a look at why maybe it didn't work for you right now. See, it takes other people. That's why I belong to a mastermind group, and that's why I facilitate them. I watch them as they talk amongst each other, which is somebody brings a failure. This flopped. Yeah, but why? What did you do? Nope, you must have done something. Look, that process was broken right here. Try this. Try this. So again, what principles are you not putting into place in order to break through? Whatever the breakthrough needs to be for you. Cindy, Joe, welcome. Good to see you. Good morning to you. Okay, so which is why even if I'm good at doing something, it doesn't mean that's something I need to do. I have to have a deep down desire that drives me on when I get tired, frustrated, or just unmotivated in the moment. Oh yeah, there's a reason I'm not a concert pianist. I really didn't have the desire to do it up on stage. I'm a darn good pianist. I am talented, skilled, trained well. I practiced for many, many years, played for many, many years for myself. I'm very, very good at pretty much any musical instrument except percussion. But I had no desire and still have no desire to do it on a public forum. I don't want to perform. No desire. So, that's the key, isn't it? What is it that I desire enough to do to keep doing in order to make money from it? Because I could, I've been offered over the years opportunities to be in a band, to be in an orchestra. Many years ago. That was many years ago. That wasn't something I wanted to get up every morning and do. It was something. So, now the other thing is that sometimes, and this is kind of what I've fallen into, I headed in one direction with my business and it's gone into a different direction because as I've been in business, it's uncovered something I never really identified. That everything I do is rooted in my belief that knowledge and education is the foundation to freedom. I'd never articulated that before until this past year. And I'm literally until these past few months. I'd never articulated that. It's been almost 8 years in business. Next week, into June, is when I started my business. So it's been 8 years. I've made money. I've had plenty of customers, got a great customer base, working on terrific projects. The passion that drove me, never really articulated it until these past couple months. Isn't that interesting? I'm still working towards the same thing. Training, consulting, providing strategy, helping teams and individuals to identify what their issues are so that they can take care of them. Consulting, giving you the answers. Hey, here's the problem. Here's the answer. Let's go. Let's get it done. Facilitating mastermind groups. So, final comments here before I shut down the recording is desire. Yes, desire. Now I understand why so many things I'm good at don't work out. Simple concept I was missing. That's why it's so helpful to gather and talk about it. Honestly, that's why it's so helpful to gather together as we do every weekday morning and put it out there and let's comment and let's talk about it. Something's going to hit somebody somewhere. That's an interesting question, Joe, who left. Can you forget about the money? I don't know. Would have liked a little more clarification on that question. I'm not quite sure what's meant by that. All right, so we're at the top of the hour. I'm going to close down the recording. This is Charlene Burke with Grow Because You Know. That's www.growbecauseyouknow.com. Let's move forward with the day on purpose, with purpose, to grow our hearts, grow our minds, grow our businesses. Until next time, have a great day.